Okay, welcome everybody. I am Philip J. Watt. This is Dissect Media, and don't I have an amazing interview lined up for you guys today? This is a very necessary interview, independent media at its best, interviewing Rod Culleton from the Great Australian Party and also Mark Aldridge, the lead senator candidate for South Australia for the Great Australian Party. This is going to be action-packed. I know many of you want to hear from these two in a more sort of candid, natural way. Rod's just released a brilliant video yesterday exposing the undermining of our Constitution, a very heartfelt message, but very confusing to many as well because of the jargon involved in all the constitutional terminology and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to get a very simplistic snapshot from Rod straight away around all that, and then we're going to lay out what the Great Australian Party want to do for the Australian people. So thank you for joining me, gentlemen. It is a pleasure, and I look forward to this chat.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure.
Great, guys. So, all right, Rod, let's just start with you. As mentioned, you released that video yesterday basically saying that that Australia is lawless, and that is a really big concept for people to understand. And I mean, of course, the Constitution is the document that gives the authority for a government to exist in the first place. So if that government is undermining its responsibilities for adhering to the Constitution, then we have an invalid and what some might call a treasonous government. So can you explain in some simple language for the layman, for like myself, who isn't involved in constitutional language and whatnot, what's going on? What happened with the Constitution and the Australia Act and all those other things that you mapped out yesterday?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the Constitution. The Constitution has been put in the drawer, and essentially, the government hasn't been keeping up the maintenance, so it hasn't been running true to our Constitution. So, in other words, they've just let the grass grow over it. But the foundation is very much there, and it's the foundation that's the underpinning law of this great nation. And we have adopted a English law, and that law is the law until the people go to a referendum and make changes. Now, the changes can be made by the Parliament until the Parliament otherwise provides. Now, I know it is complex, but what is complex is all the legislation that these so-called politicians have been passing that has just basically been potholes put in a fantastic expressway, and deliberately to pretty much make it a grinding effort to get justice in this country. And I went into Parliament as a senator. I was chosen as number 11 of 12 senators of every state. Now, the people all know that we have a constitution, although my role was to bring it back fair and square, which I successfully did with Section 44. I was the first to raise the issue, and then they just went down in dominoes. But I did it for a reason, because that was one way to show the public that the Constitution is paramount. The Parliament must adhere to our Constitution. That is the whole purpose why people go to vote. So when people go to vote, they have someone like me or Mark say, well, we're a bit different at GAP. We don't say we're going to represent the people. We say to the people, we're going to defend the people. Because when you elect 12 of your senators in every state, it's in odges, and your role at $199,000 a year is to be the watchdog to make sure that the states are complying. They're not making laws that are inconsistent with the governing law, which is the Commonwealth Constitution. Now, we know the problem why the states are supposed to be subservient to the Constitution, but the Australia Act has allowed them pretty much a a security guard to take a higher role than a detective sergeant. You know, they don't have that authority, and we must bring it back to the Constitution. Now, yesterday's message was done ad lib. I didn't rehearse for it. I've been in silence. I've been ridiculed in the media, and we're just absolute nonsense. I've been threatened with the Australian Federal Police. I was named a criminal over a no commercial value key, and I am alleged to be a bankrupt, which I am not. Okay, and they have done everything to pull me away from the poker table. But yesterday was a speech where I felt after Anzac that I just had to come, because I really, my family and family values are really important to me. But what really is really important to me, and that touches both myself and many people, is what our Anzacs fought for. And I look at my children, and they're at the age when the Anzacs were fighting, and of course Vietnam, any person that's gone and fought for this great nation. And we must, as people, would not be living the lives that we're doing, and we cannot sit back and allow a unconstitutionally or a non-compliant government purport to be something that they're not. So I spotted the problem. I always upheld my constitutional duties as an elected senator for Western Australia. And I asked the question, and I knew when I asked that question, I took the head off the snake. I wasn't there for the money. It was either go hard or go home. And I knew I was finished. I can remember someone saying the F word in the chamber, and Brandis and Matthias Cormann coming up to me and saying, well, what made you ask a question like that? And I said, well, Dennis Lilly wasn't the only famous bowler to come out of Western Australia. So it was a question that needed to be not only asked for the people that I represented in Western Australia. As a federal senator, it needed to reverberate, and it did reverberate right around Australia and the world and the United Kingdom, that we have a problem. And I spotted the problem, and I won't be patronised by George Brandis saying, you know, you got past 16 High Court jurists. You know, they have a responsibility. They might have to be impartial sitting up on that Jarrah bench, but, you know, they need to know the law. They're administering the law, and they can't just be above the law. And that's, you know, we're seeing this playing out in America, and I guess this was a Trump message that was delivered yesterday. And to be honest, you know, I'm not superstitious, but I felt the Anzacs were talking for me yesterday, and it was just a really touching moment, because I just want to get back our Australia. We need our Australian people and families to prosper, and we're just not doing that at the moment. It's just too hard, and it's a critical mass, and we need changes now. So I wasn't prepared to silence anymore. I had to bite my lip for 2 years. We've tried everything to get back in the house. My brother-in-law was only filling a vacancy, and you know, unfortunately he went on the interchange bench, and I just couldn't get him off the field. And he's not been getting a kick either, so that we just wasted a big opportunity. And also with Pauline Hanson, you know, we wasted a big opportunity, and that's why we've created the Great Australian Party.
Excellent. You really are a true Aussie champion, Rod. We do appreciate it. Those who are conscious of these concerns around the Parliament making themselves sovereign and not enacting the will of the people, not working in the interest of the people. It's been accused for a long time, for at least several decades, that the two-party system is the two-party tyranny, the two-party shit show, working for the same corporate masters and implementing macro policy designed to support big business and big money, and not in the interest of the Australian people. And that's why there is so much dissent right around our communities, including the fact that police officers should be peace officers. They should be looking after us, the people, where they're on our team. We should be making sure that our government is occupied by people who truly want to work on behalf of the interests of their communities and the environment. We'll get to what you want to do in terms of the Great Australian Party's policy platform for Australia in a moment. But Mark, to you now. I will admit my bias. I am friends with Mark. I'm very fond of him, and I do support the work that you do, Mark. But can you just lay out to the audience why you joined the Great Australian Party and what you plan to do in terms of if you to get into the Senate?
Look, that's really interesting, and it's a great question. People that know me in South Australia know that I've been fighting for the rights and liberties of all Australians for about 20 years, and about 5 or 6 years into that, I realised I preferred to be independent because the parties that were approaching me at the time told me that I would have to do the will of the party, and I realised at that stage that that's where democracy was failing. If I'm elected to Parliament to represent, it's to represent the people of my electorate and the people of the nation. And the larger political parties that were offering me seats early in my political career were determining that I must do this or must do that. And I realised that didn't work. And so a bit like Rod, I've been sort of fighting the system for a long time, fighting to change electoral law. And when I started looking at the failures of electoral law and the bias in the system that was the result of the two major parties controlling electoral law and controlling how Parliament, the electoral system worked to elect or maintain their power over Parliament, might be a better word. I started to study the Constitution. So, like Rod, I mean, we're on slightly different paths because obviously as we read and study the Constitution, we get different understandings of different sections of the Constitution, and Rod's been in a much better position than me, being elected rightfully to the Senate. So he's had the ability to study a different field of the Constitution. I think what GAP's about, and the reason I got so excited by the party was that you get on the phone and chat to them, and it's like chatting with a mate at the pub. No, that's how it should be. And the only thing that's driving any of our candidates is to bring change to the country. We're a team that's got balls. So Rod's been in the court. Rod stands up. Rod's brought beautiful things before the Parliament. I've been in the courts, the Supreme Court and the Court of Dispute Returns, trying to fight for the free and informed vote of the people. So I think, excuse me, Colby, I think that's what made it exciting to join the party, because the only interest that we have is restoring the Parliament. And I think people need to understand something of importance from my point of view. If I was elected as an independent, for instance, say, and I get into the Parliament, or I'm elected with GAP and I get into the Parliament, into the Senate, there's very little one person can do if all they're going to do is lobby and critique the government. What we can do if we get into the Parliament is actually use our understanding of the law and the Constitution to restore the Parliament and hold to account the members of Parliament. Now, that's a powerful tool that the other parties aren't offering. So if you when you go to vote, if you were to vote for GAP, the one thing you've got that's important, not only have you got a good and educated candidates that understand not just the law, but are patriotic for the best interests of our nation, but you've also got people that can, instead of sitting back and just critiquing like we see too often in the Parliament, we can actually get in there and actually restore the rule of law and hold these guys to account, and by doing that, empower the people of this nation back above Parliament where they rightfully should be.
Well, can I just say, sorry, you're right there, Mark, and people don't realise until you've been in the Senate and done what I've done with the team that I've had, that the other group of people that we must really thank is the great framers that framed our Constitution, and they've made the Senate that powerful. It's more powerful than the House of Lords in London, and I found that power when I was there, and until the Parliament otherwise provides, we were going to provide a defined jurisdiction that would basically go into a jurisdiction where, you know, I was one with my large farm. It was taken by a default judgment when I was actually not around, and I couldn't get into the court because of a 3-day appeal process, and a registrar took the farm on a default judgment, and there was that many farms taken on default judgments without being heard on the merits. Well, that's not law in this country. That's a nonsense that's been someone in Parliament's been able to do something for someone else, and then that's how they're creating the donations for the party. The people have got to have a look at what the major parties are doing. We need people in there with a heart. The best racehorse on a track is one with a heart. And that's what we've just, everyday people that just want to get this nation ahead, not some political tosser that just wants to get in there and be some movie star and not even read the Constitution. It was absolutely amazing the amount of senators that did not even pick up the Constitution to read it. It was disgraceful, and it was their role, constitutional role, to be the watchdog for their state to make sure that people aren't becoming victims through the law. Now, I had beautiful young men come into my office, men and women, and, make appointments, and then next week I'd think, they've cancelled and they've committed suicide because the family courts, 21 young, Australians commit suicide every week. You can't tell me that's a good industry and be proud of it sitting up on a bloody Jarrah bench. It has to stop. And yesterday was emotional because I don't want my fellow Australian people dealt with in this way. It is cruel. You wouldn't treat animals like that. It is disgusting. And yesterday was a proud moment in my life to be able to come out after 2 years of the attacks that the government put on me and then sue me for $765,000, which they said I accepted a waiver. I never accepted anything. But they also sacked all my staff, and they actually made it that hard for me in the Court of Disputed Returns. I never wanted to go there because it's just a cleansing house to reshuffle the deck for your House of Parliament. Section 360 and 368, people need to go and have a look at it, the Commonwealth Electoral Act, no right of appeal and real justice to be observed. So the judges can lean against the bench and say, he's disqualified. And I could never be sentenced for that key. And the High Court altered the Act to get me on the conjunctive part subject to sentencing by removing the words must and replacing it with may. That is not what I want to see out of my High Court of Australia. And that's when I started to really start looking. It's not a constitutional jurisdiction. Queen of Australia is not recognised, and it's an offence against Clause 2. It offends Clause 2 and 5 of our Constitution. And here they are telling a sworn-in senator who's given an oath to Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom to start giving my powers to Queen of Australia. I don't think so. So this government and governments before that, and certainly the Labor government, have got a big explanation to do to the Australian people, but it's too late because the House of Lords got my prayer and documents have been dispatched, and they have to make answer, and they have to tell us where this adopted titles comes from, and England's going to have to do something because if they don't, they're liable.
It sounds like a backdoor to a republic in a certain way. But Mark, sorry, you wanted to interject, so jump in there, mate.
Well, look, I think what I'd like people to understand is I've had a bit of feedback on social media about allegiance to the Queen. What people have got to understand is there's a constitution in Australia, and if you wish to take a seat in government to represent, you must, under the Constitution, under the schedule of the Constitution, swear allegiance. Now, people have come out and said you shouldn't be doing that. Well, this is the problem with Australia, is that we're not educated on the Constitution. It is not an easy document to understand. It's not taken word for word. People read it and go and look at word for word, but it's a more detailed document than that. And one of the problems with the Constitution is that the determination of each section of the Constitution is debated by High Court challenges. And if the High Court's not doing the right thing, of course, it directs the Constitution the wrong way. And as Rod just mentioned, certain sections of the Constitution allow government to otherwise provide, and of course they have, and it's not been in our best interest. So, we need someone in there as a watchdog, and that watchdog needs to be GAP. We're the only ones putting forward constitutional defence. But that's not just what we're about. I mean, You could ask Rod about farming issues, and he'd be there for the farmers like I would. You could ask him about all sorts of, like the family court that he's just brought up. There's lots of problems in this country, and we're in there to battle for them. But one of the ways that we could best achieve that is to re-empower the Constitution and put the people back above Parliament where they rightfully should be.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. We've got to clean out our own nest first. We've got to get back to what the law actually is. The rule of law, it's not perfect in many ways, but that is how we've evolved our social system, how we've evolved the democratic process, and where we are right now. So at least get back and in alignment to what our rule of law is. And then if Australians want to change it, we can vote on it. That's where referendums and CIR and all that stuff comes into it. But we at least need to go back to our roots where we actually belong. Now, in saying that, though, you did say the Constitution is hard to read, but it is quite a small document. I think from memory, it's only like 26 pages or whatnot. And then there's the annotated version, the red book to that, which is much larger and has all those court cases, which is basically the justification for why the Constitution was designed that way. And then, of course, is the green book, which is the next annotated version, which is accused or alleged to be out of alignment with the true ethos of the Constitution. But I just encourage anybody watching to go and read the Constitution. You can get it online, and it is a short read. Now, moving on to the dissent and the disenfranchisement in our country and right around the world for that matter, the Edelman Trust Barometer of 2018 illustrated that 2/3 of Australians don't trust the government and the media. And that is an absolute shocker. That is a huge level of disdain towards the system and those operating the social system. And that's why you've got so many people leaving the two-party duopoly, the two-party tyranny, and they're moving to places like United Australia Party, One Nation, Anning's Party, the Great Australian Party, Health Australia Party, Hemp Party. There are a heap of good and not so good minor parties out there and independents. And so what I want to talk about now, and this is directed to you, Rod, why I put the Great Australian Party on top of all of that list is specifically around returning to the Constitution, but also around the reinstallation of a national public or people's bank, just like the Commonwealth Bank of Australia used to be. We have monopolised our world on so many levels, our banking, our pharmaceutical, our media. All of these monopolisation problems need to be responded to with some sort of localised effort and a re-empowerment of our public assets and national infrastructure. And so that is a huge key one for how we move forward. So what's your plan around reform back to the provisions of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia as outlined in the Constitution?
Well, look, I want to make it simple for your listeners, okay? And as much as I appreciate it can come across complicated. I just want to make it. I need to make this very clear. We do have a constitution, whether people like it or not. We, as subjects to Australia or to the Queen, we are all bound to that law. That is the law in this country. And all I ask for your listeners to do is go and read Clause 2 of the 1900 UK Act and Clause 3. That means it cannot be inoperable. And Clause 5, it's binding on every person, court, judge, anyone, Prime Minister, anyone. So when you go to the polls, you put your power of attorney, the Great Australian Party is making you an offer. And our offer is to uphold the Constitution. Now, in upholding the Constitution, you will see no income tax go on families straight away. You'll see 9% compulsory super fall away. So there's 1/3 of the income coming in through the front door. It'll automatically empower a commissioner watchdog on electricity prices, better yields at the farm gate. It will be a broom that just comes through and just clean. Actually, not a broom. It'll be a high pressure cleaner. Fantastic. And everything will restore. So the people then become the beneficiary of their asset, which is Australia. So the foreign companies that are usurping powers or whatever will have to pay for more commodities, because at the end of the day, Australia is very much quality, and we have really got to grow our agriculture. Agriculture is a great industry, and of course we've got a very big ant nest to the north of us, and they all have to be fed. And here we are seeing our dairy industry farmers, basically eating off, we're closing down our great dairy, and you can't get enough formula up into the Asian market. It is just a nonsense. And look at Barnaby Joyce, he comes out swinging and says he's going to do that. They're all like a high-performance boat with no prop. And what GAP has got a prop on the boat, and we will really bite in for the people. So when a person, anyone goes to the polls and they vote for what we're offering, they're accepting our offer, and they are giving their power of attorney to us to go and uphold their best interest. And that's why we're going in, and that's what I've always done, is put the Constitution fair and square. That is the pill that is going to kill the cancer. I mean, it's already there. We don't have to move motions to try and, re-invoke it or to invoke it or bring it out of it. It's already there. We've just got to go straight in, ask the question in the chamber. If it's not right, it's fixed. So that's it. And that's what we're offering the people. We're offering them a bona fide politician that is elected by the people to uphold their rights. And we can't think of a better machine. It's like saying, why would you go and plough the paddock with an old Massey Ferguson with still bloody wheels on it and a one cylinder Liston motor on it? You can go in and get the 555 Versi out of the shed with a big wide line. I mean, that's the difference. And that's what we want to do. And that's our commitment. There's no bending. And if people think that, even just what I've come through, I won't bend. And I've taken all my candidates to take an oath, because we're a team. And that team will be focused on getting the job done. And we reckon we'll get in there and do it really quickly. We can't see it delaying, because Australia cannot keep going with a broken diff. That's it.
And that's exactly why myself and Revive Australia want to are asking all of the people who are voting for minor parties and independents right across Australia is to put GAP right at the top of that, because that is a really important, that the national monetary sovereignty and taking care of our Australian dollar and the currency and using that to really protect and enhance our Commonwealth and do some really big projects that we need to build sufficiency and whatnot into the system.
Well, that's the whole ethos. That's the whole ethos. That's what it's common for the common people, and it's the wealth of your nation. That is the reason why it's called the Commonwealth. And you must go back and understand the basics of what our rights really are. Yet we remain silent because we entrust people to do the right thing, and they're even taking an oath to Queen of Australia. So in effect, they say, well, we're not breaching the Constitution because we haven't given an oath to that UK Act. Now, that is a serious problem. And we're just saying we want bona fide people in there. And getting back to your banks, we did the 60-minute show, and, why were 49 police officers turning up to a farm on a civil matter? A lot of these police officers don't want to be doing what's happening. They feel something's not right. And we're not saying get rid of the private banks. We're saying bring back a sovereign bank, make it competitive, and then the other private banks, they have to fall into line. Now, we know why ASIC, we know why the ACCC, and we know why all these government authorities can't do anything, the CDPP, because they've got no head of power. You don't have a head of power to the Constitution under Queen of Australia. And that's where Whitlam has completely, in effect, ruined our country. We've been running in a de facto republic since 1973, and the people didn't vote on it. And even local council, Wayne Glue's right. People voted 3 times at a referendum. A local council's like a middleman that we can't afford. And that's why take it into the Senate, get it fixed. That's what the Senate's there. But all the 12 senators in the past that have come out of the states have sat on their bloody bums and done nothing. It's a disgrace. Oh, yes, they have. They've taken their pay packet.
Okay, Mark.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to say that when we talk about justice, the Constitution, social justice is really important, and people probably don't understand why they're losing their rights and liberties. But social justice was achieved by a jury. So, for instance, say if you're accused of something and you go to court, a jury of your peers would make a decision as to whether you've done something wrong and what the award or or custodial sentence might be. And we see juries being taken away, even in social matters like defamation cases and things like that. So justice is now being determined by the Parliament rather than the people. And that's another reason that the Constitution is very powerful, because at the moment you've got social justice being determined by a bunch of people in Parliament that aren't particularly liked by the people or supported by the people. So the last thing you want is that. What we need to do is put social justice back into the hands of the people. And I think that's very important. And I think people don't understand why we're seeing bad laws and things happening at a social level that are unacceptable to us, is because Parliament think they're above the people. We need to rein them back in, because the people are above Parliament, and social change is made by society itself. It's not made by some sort of advisors to some sort of parliamentary committees, and that's where the power's been taken from the people. So I thought I'd throw that in on top of Rod's speech.
No, well said. And so what I'll do now is I'll move on to something that you're really well versed in, Mark, in terms of Rod talked about the issues around supporting our farmers and agriculture and all those sorts of things. And Rod also mentioned about having the public banks, at least keeping the private banking industry honest, as well as I see a super important role for a decentralised network of local public banks, so that it can fund the social programs and infrastructure needs that we do need very, very quickly. But on top of that, we have concerns around global derivatives, debt bubbles, and then there's also environmental concerns, grand solar minimum, or any other hiccups that do happen naturally as part of the cycles of the climate and the sun and whatnot. And we are not sufficient. We are certainly not capable of caring for ourselves if there are some hiccups in that manner. The way that we import and export food is quite toxic. Our food supply in general is quite toxic. The sprays and chemicals on our farms and the way that farmers have been forced into this very sick system, we need to move to some more organic polycultural farming. We need to make sure it's localised so that we have some sort of sufficiency. That doesn't mean remove trade altogether. It just means to have some sufficiency on the ground through local public banks, supporting local business and having local food and resources, including incorporating hemp, which is so bloody important for biodegradable plastics, all the environmental concerns with biofuels. Then, of course, is building materials, cement, medicines, food, animal food, ropes, clothing, textiles, you name it. A massive, massive part for how we move forward, hemp and public banking. So what do you see in terms of how we move forward in that localisation, decentralisation process, Mark, for Australia?
Look, the problem really is that the multinational companies that are running the show at the moment, and also financing the political parties that are empowering them, are walking away from this country with tons and billions of dollars of paying no tax. And it's a cushy deal that's been going on for way too long. The reason that things like the smaller farmers and producers are being knocked in the head is because it's all a control issue. They want to control not just us, we the people, but they want to control every aspect of our lives, whether it's the social implications of their policies and their legislative reform, or it's food production. And look, hemp, the problem with hemp was, and always has been, that hemp was a product that up until the 30s in America it was compulsory that you grew hemp. So it was, and you had people, great people, and I'll say this, like Henry Ford and Rudolph Diesel, that were designing cars, that were designing engines, and they were doing that based around environmentally friendly things. That wasn't the point at the time. But Henry Ford built in '34 built a Ford made from hemp resin, which was stronger than steel, and he was running the car on hemp ethanol. You had Rudolph Diesel that was designing a diesel engine based on hemp oil. Their vision was that you could grow everything you needed in the fields, including the fuel for the tractors that powered the fields. Now, the problem with that system was that it was decentralised, and so the major players at the time, like Big Oil and Pharmacy and so on, couldn't have your local farmer producing something like that. They wanted to control the production, so that's what brought about prohibition. And we need to step back a little bit, see where Australia could be right now, now that hemp's becoming more acceptable socially, as we've clawed back common sense, is we could be leading. We could have been inventing and designing the machines to harvest. We could be using it for food produce, as you said, textile industries, medical industries, and so forth. But the reason that those sorts of things are frowned upon is that because the government and their masters can't control it. And so if, for instance, say the hemp medical side of hemp, which is well known, marijuana is well known, is the problem is a person can produce that to some degree in their backyard and self-medicate. And the pharmacy companies don't want something like that happening. The government doesn't know how to control it, and so they don't want anything to happen. And this is a social issue. That the control doesn't need to be there. And I'm not I'm a libertarian to some degree, and the party are about liberty. But we're not even getting a hearsay. The people aren't getting a hearsay. And you're seeing people out there. I know of one case in South Australia, Jenny, where she produced some of this medicine. She gave it away for free. It was extremely effective. The people that used the medicine were adults. There was no money exchanging hands, and she's facing a 6-year jail sentence. And that really is absurd, because the government have already taken a position that medical applications are viable, and they're saying that it's quite legal. The thing is, they don't want anyone doing it unless they can control the production of that and the income of that. So we need to decentralise in that respect. And the same applies to politics. When you go in to vote, everyone's always thought for years and years, and I grew up with it, that you had to vote Labor or you had to vote Liberal. Okay, and that's how we grew up. We didn't really, politically, we were never taught anything about politics at school. The Constitution wasn't taught to us at school. It was all foreign to me years ago. And so people go with this party system that excludes everybody and demands that its candidates do the will of the party, which is immediately wrong, and undermines the sovereignty of the people and the power of the people over Parliament. So we need to step back a long way, as you can imagine, but we'll see how we go from there. But that's what we're there to do, is to look at the common sense issues and re-empower the people and our farmers and our producers along the way. And if you know much about the hemp farming issues, hemp farming would be a magic thing for our producers here, because it's a crop that doesn't affect the soil and uses very little water.
That's right, and it also doesn't use sprays and chemicals from the petrochemical monopolies and whatnot, and really good for the environment and really good food for all the vegans and vegetarians out there. Some of the best oils you can put in your system. An amazing, amazing plant. We do have an endocannabinoid system in our body which absorbs the cannabinoids from cannabis. It is our companion plant, both medicinally and on a resource level.
Look, I just want to let you, as party leader of the Great Australian Party, we just want to get rid of the red tape on small business. Small business support, employs, 2/3 of the people around this great nation, and we've got to look after them. And people put their everything on the line with their passion to run their small business, and we must look after that. And once we get back to a sovereign bank, we're going to not allow any receivers to go into businesses. We're going to allow the directors to keep control over through an administrative process, but no receivers will be coming in and taking control or just selling up their businesses. That will be outlawed under GAP. I've been there, done that with that stuff, and I know that back to front. And we have, GAP got registered on the 5th of April. It's a newly registered party. I believed a party needed to go in to the parliament because that would give you a jury inside the House, more so than independents. I tend to feel that independents are like metal filings. They stick to a magnet, and they'll just go in with one major player, and that's what they do. They win them over and give them something for their electorate to make them all look proud, and really, that's just, to me, I see that as a political bribe. So having the small parties and having blocks, you can really hold it to account. But what the Great Australian Party is going to do, I don't care how controversial or what subject or what belief or whatever. Everyone will have a platform at GAP. Everyone will have a platform. So we've got Karen Burge in New South Wales. She's with the hemp, and we've also got a lower house member supporting hemp. And I am all for diversity in agriculture. This just going out on a like a mouse on a spinning wheel, where these guys that go and pay $1 million for a combine header, which I've been down that track, and forever paying back, and they're all price takers, farmers. They're not price getters. So what GAP will do, considering I've done the value adding in agriculture, I never inherited a farm. My wife and I worked for every conceivable acre that we had, or hectare, and we had a broadacre farm in Williams, and we value added oats where the system would say, look, all you can get's $150 at farm gate, and we used to take it and value add it and get $1,500 a tonne. So we'll be really focused on the end user customer. We'll be putting a team into the Asia markets to open up why the commodity prices. We'll be starting at the other end. So we'll be going to the end user and coming back from the end user back and say, well, why is the farmer, whether it be dairy, beef, cereal grains, hemp, diverse, organics, whatever the produce is being taken off the farms, we will then come back and say, righto, no, this is where the price needs to be. So we're going to really oversee the middleman, and that's not leaving the middleman struggling. That's giving him, we don't want him getting too fat on the profits. It's about a fair system right through, because if we do not keep our farmers on the land, we will lose our heritage in this country. And as far as environmentalists, water, we're going to look at bringing water down from the Ord. We're going to look at having nurseries out into drought areas and assist those farmers so that they can carry their cattle through. So it's just better management, but giving them better water management. So we'll reticulate Australia. We do it in our gardens. There's no reason why we can't be piping water down through the guts of Australia, that these places can use it to run a nursery facility, to grow lucerne, to keep their cattle, because we don't want cruelty in animals. And so, look, it's just common sense. That's all we want to do. And it's not going to be hard. It's going to be a quick fix. It's a quick fix. And the reason why the politicians that are in there at the moment are not doing anything, it's like Michaelia Cash. He said, Rodney, I'd love to support you, but no, I just can't. I'd be going against the party, and I'm not allowed to. I mean, how, I said, Michaelia, the law is you've got to put my motion in the House. That's what you have to do. And they just all turned their back on me. I just can't believe it. We need to drain the swamp and get those people out of the parliament and get people in there that are going to uphold the law and do the right thing by the people who entrusted them to be in the House to represent them, because nothing's coming back to the people, only hardship. So that's it. So common sense. That's one of our policies.
I think you're more speaking to uncommon sense there, Rod, because it's not widespread. And that's very much related to a very propagandized public and indoctrination system. We have a very sick information dissemination network through the dinosaur mainstream media, and now big tech from Silicon Valley centralizing the internet. I've put forward views when it comes to how we circumnavigate free speech by transitioning the postal Australia Post Network to the digital age. It's a really big one. I won't get into that now, but that is a necessity for how we move forward. There is a whole host of monopolisation issues, so we need to respond to that with localisation. Yep. There's a whole host of centralisation issues. We need to respond with decentralisation. And there's a whole host of control and authoritarianism issues, and therefore we need to respond with individual and national sovereignty, and that rests within the Constitution right there. All right, Mark, let's get on to something a little bit more controversial. I know you've been speaking about this lately. It is a very important discussion. We need to have it, and we need to do it with a bit of common sense, as Rod mentioned, and a little bit of civil discourse. There's nothing wrong with debating the issues that we face in Australia. So what is intelligent immigration, Mark Aldridge?
Intelligent immigration. It's a foreign concept in Australia, I think. Really, immigration is... the country was built on immigration, and I have friends from all different races and different religious backgrounds that have all put a lot of hard work in. And what we're seeing wrong with immigration is where we see the left trying to control the immigration policy with some sort of compassionate approach that bring as many people as you can into the country. Now, of course, as we've just spoken about, we have issues with water, we have issues with power. Our hospital and healthcare services have dropped considerably. When I grew up, there were 17 beds per 1,000. Australia was on top of the healthcare system. Now we're below 2. If we're going to increase immigration, it's being increased at the moment based on the concept that if you bring 200,000 people into the country, they're going to have to build houses and this, that and the other. The trouble is we're not bringing people in that can fund that. So the nation has to fund that. And we don't have the facilities here for them. So obviously we need to stem the immigration numbers at the moment, and we need to assess also very important issues when it comes to social integration. At the moment, we've had an open slather policy that's created massive issues and social issues for us, because the people coming here are not getting the support services, they're not integrating into the community as well as we'd like to see. And I think we need to rethink a lot of that. And so firstly, I would think it would be common sense to lower immigration rates right now, other than where they're essentially needed, and to readdress the immigration platform. In other words, if someone comes here, they're explained quite comfortably as to what the rules and regulations of this nation are, and that we as a people try and assist them in adopting into our social, understanding our social values. So immigration policy needs to change, but I don't think it needs to be brutal. We're seeing one extreme side of as many people as you like coming into the country, and we're seeing a far right side that says no one should come, we should start banning people on race and religion. I think we need to find a centre row, and I know Rod would agree with me. I'd like to hear Rod's opinion on this, because I have spoken to Rod, and he's a passionate man like me for communities working together. But I do know there's need for change, and I think that change needs to be led in a compassionate manner and in the right way. What are your views, Rod? Well, I know your views. Can you articulate them, Rod?
Well, the Constitution makes it very clear for all persons, and I know, there are extremists out there, but I'll tell you what, there's some extremist Australians too, and we just got to have respect. There's a lot of love in the world, but there's no respect, and I could think of nothing worse than being an immigrant coming into the country and facing some form of bullying or attack, when you want to go. I just think that's got to be, there's no call for that. We've got to really pull ourselves in and have respect. And but on the other hand, we've got to have the infrastructure that copes. We've got to have, we just can't keep bringing more and more people in and we don't have the infrastructure. So I say GAP's policy at the moment is clean up our own backyard first, make sure that we have systems in place that there is more affiliation with communities, and respect. We got to learn respect and toughen the laws, and really toughen, and I mean toughen the laws to where, you know, they get out of order and they are severely dealt with. You know, a bit like me, I suppose, filling out the nomination form and then all of a sudden the Australian Electoral Commission, you know, moves that quick and says, you know, I'll 2 years jail. Well, you know, on something like that, we need that sort of approach on people that are breaking the law in this country and applying it hard. And this is where its gaps will just go. Well, it all comes back to the Constitution. The Constitution will just immediately fix it. We've just got to go into the House, get it up front and centre, push everything to where it's where it's got to be, what they call nunc pro tunc then for now. And it all comes into line. I honestly can't wait to get into Parliament with the team to do it. I'm really itching. It's like a kid waiting for a Christmas present. We just know what the problem has been. We know our argument. We know our courts are non-constitutionally compliant. We can get in and fix it up that quick. And the remedy is the people need to put us there. That's the answer and the solution.
It's interesting, I think, to finish on that, is that Rod's correct. We're not putting a solid platform for new arrivals. If people come here and breach the law, they should be sent straight out of the country immediately. And if we start doing that, the ones that are left here, they're going to have to pull their heads in and understand there are rules and regulations here. The same comes with slaughter laws and things like that. There should be no exemptions. We have rules and regulations in this country. They have every right themselves to lobby for reform, but they have no right to demand reform. They must fit into society. And our job is to represent the people of this country, and the people of this country is diverse. It's a diverse country. We must be able to sit down with any particular person with any particular grievance and find a way forward that's best for them and also the country, and in a unified manner. We can't do these things in a unified manner, and the government and the media have had this habit for the last decade of dividing us on sex and race and religion, and a divided people are much easier to persuade or ignore. And I think that it's time for us under GAP to become a united people and get a lot more power back and start to demand and have Parliament represent us, the people, rather than representing what we see lately is minority groups. We see minority ideas being pushed on the majority. And unfortunately, democracy doesn't work like that.
I had a great, when I was farming, we had a great product called Zap, and it was a backline for sheep. You just you put a backline down, and it used to get rid of all the bloody lice and everything like now. Now we've got Gap, and we're going to use it as a backline in Parliament to get rid of all the politicians. You know, like it's just the answer. And you know, the major ingredient in it is the Constitution. So, you know, we'll just backline the Parliament and watch all the fleas fall off the back.
And that's why that's why it is so super important that all the people who are disenfranchised with the system is to put GAP at the top of your preferences, because it is, you guys are over the core target. This conversation is over the target for the baby or incremental steps we need to move forward. In regards to immigration, the best thing we could do for the world is shine a guiding light onto it and show the world what they need to do as well. We need to decentralise, we need to localise, we need to return the power to the people. We need to make sure the Parliament and the people who work within the governmental system are working on in our interests, because after all, we the people are the government. So what we need to do is, and a lot of the immigration as well, is some of the most highly skilled people from over in different countries, and they're leaving their own countries where they could be in their homes, helping them to move forward in the ways that they should be. And so I'm absolutely open and compassionate around, you know, us being a multi-ethnic society, and it's phenomenal. We're an amazingly beautiful country. We're built of so many different types of cultures or subcultures and all those things, and that's fantastic. But we do need to look after ourselves. We need to make sure that we uncongest our cities. We need to make sure that we decentralising our population. There are a lot of people who do not want to live in city environments, and they're sort of forced to. We need to give them the mechanisms and facilitate that process.
That's right.
Which is
sorry, that's right, Matt. Yeah, sorry, that's right. That's why we want to bring back agriculture, because we want to make sure that the country regions are prospering, and all the infrastructure's out there. Families can go out there, have a country life, and the towns can prosper through agriculture, through diversity in agriculture, like your hemp and pharmaceuticals and all that. So I agree with what you're saying there, and that's why we have to do it. But, you know, I could elect you, or you could come to me and approach me and say, I want to be a candidate. If we all go into the Parliament and don't take an oath to the rightful Queen, which is Queen Elizabeth II, which is the term, whether you believe in the Queen or not, it is the term and clause 2 of the concept of the law. She can do no wrong, but we must all go in and swear allegiance to that, because otherwise, who's going to police us now that we go in if we don't take that oath for the Australian people? Because Australia is such a wealthy asset, and any individual could go in there and be rich overnight. That's not what it's for. It's to bring back the profits to the people. And what I will say also, which will help everything, I'm in London. I've been, supporting it for well over, 6 months. The Privy Council has not gone. It is still available in the Parliament. It's just the Labor government and everyone doesn't want to bring it back. We can bring it back, and we will bring it back at GAP, because your politicians are above the law. And what happened to me, I couldn't get the Senate to act. But if I had the Privy Council, then the Privy Council will hold that High Court, and make sure it's accountable. So the Privy Council's got to come back. We've got to bring back the values of Australia: country, agriculture, all the people and subjects to the Queen, and prosper as a nation. And that's what GAP will do. That's just summing it right up. And that's what, call us old-fashioned, but I'll tell you what, we'll appreciate something, a cornerstone law like the Commonwealth Constitution, than a pack of cards out there purporting to be some building. We know what's got to be done. We've got the right men, Mark, Wayne Glue, Peter Gargan, and all these guys. Our team is just so dedicated, and they're available 24/7. It's just amazing. And that's what it is. It's teamwork. So GAP will go in as a team, because we're not going to try and be one better than the other. And we've picked everyone. Everyone's got something to offer at GAP, and we've got enough to go in and get the job done. 10 good men can win a war. It doesn't have to be an army.
Well said. And just to add to what I was saying before as well, is just the idea of actually helping to build sufficiency into our system again, not just with food and agriculture, but also resources, also helping us to build out. We could have an open source global construction set in our local communities where we're creating our own tractors and all these other things that we need.
Absolutely.
But we can incorporate 3D printers, and there's a whole host of stuff. We could build a whole car industry around hemp, as Mark was saying before. Hemp is 10 times stronger than steel. And so it's phenomenal on so many different levels, and we need to start and not only safeguard ourselves from whatever's going on the world stage, but also it builds community integration, it builds education. People are upskilling, they're getting back out in nature, they're getting away from their screens and actually interacting and cooperating with people, and actually experiencing the joy of what it actually means to be a human, not a bloody cog in a very sick, monopolised machine. So
yeah, well, can I just quickly say this? I agree with you. And you know who? Like, let's say someone wants to bring an industry, a concept or whatever to the Parliament. We won't allow the Parliament to be the final arbiter. We will allow the people to be the final arbiter. So they will come, not leave it to some bloody moron politician who thinks, I can't be bothered today because I've got a crayfish and a few hors d'oeuvres down at the racetrack, Melbourne racetrack, Flemington racetrack. It's about giving the people the say, because the best people that understand the industry, have got the passion in the industry, they will be the final arbiters. And they come and they put their case forward, no different to putting a submission to a council or a court, and they can show that it all goes forward. And what happens? State their case. I won't. Who am I to step in and knock them back? and we will do trials. We'll get people, because the amount of people that I say that go and contact a politician, they never get back to them. It's all too hard. They can't get past the first hurdle. So GAP is always open for anyone to bring anything. I like that word, any, Mark, any, shall, all those important words to GAP, and have their dream or have what they believe in, what could improve their country, their constituent, whatever. That's available. Our doors are open for business to all Australian people.
It's interesting. When I first got into politics,
it's their business.
When I first got into the political arena, people used to say to me, how do we help the farmers? The dairy industry was one. So the first thing I did was go to the dairy board. Then I went out to the farms and I met the dairy farmers and I said, what's going on? You know, that's what GAP needs to be about. We are about. It's about finding out what the best things are. But if someone asks me in Parliament, what's your view on something, I've got mates in different trades, and the idea is to go to those people that are on the grassroots, on the ground, and find out what it is, what they need and what they want. And that's what we're here to represent. We're not here to represent big industry. If big industry come to us and they've got a concept that's good, well, of course we would. But the fact is, there's nothing wrong with us supporting the smaller things. And the same happened with my markets. I opened farmers markets because the small farmers were getting knocked back by the big grocery stores, and they had a farm that was viable and they didn't have someone to buy it. So I gave them a platform to come out and sell their produce. And that worked so well because not only were they getting good money for their produce and able to expand their farms in South Australia, which was a first, then you had the local community being able to come in and get affordable produce. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about finding ways beyond what we've been educated to accept and finding better ways forward to fix the problem. And that's what GAP's about. We're not interested in being told, sorry, it's never been done that way before. It's not about whether it's been done that way before. It's about doing it the best way, and the best way for the people, for the community, and for industry and jobs. And I think that's an approach that should have been taken for the last 30 or 40 years, and it hasn't. And two things about GAP. One, we're not supported and paid for by anybody but ourselves. Okay, so we don't have to answer to anyone other than you, people that elect us. And the other is that you will find that a lot of the major parties won't be advising people to vote for us. And the good reason for that is that we're going to hold them to account. They don't like the idea. So, yes, I think the major parties are running frightened, and I think the public should realise that GAP is the answer, and they should put us first in their preferences in the Senate. And when we get into the Senate, then we can actually make them proud they did that. And I know that our team will make people proud of how they voted, and that's what's important for me and for GAP and for my family.
That's right. And it's like the farmers should control their own live sheep export. They don't need someone like David Littleproud that comes in. I mean, he wouldn't know what end of a sheep ate grass. A lot of these guys that get given these portfolios wouldn't have a clue on actually how it all runs. And that's why we want to make the people that are in control of their industries, to give them a voice in Parliament, so they become the advisors to an extent, and that's what we work with. But right across the industry, not just from one point. And what we also will do, I wanted to make this announcement. I haven't quite got round to putting it up, but I've driven road trains. I've had fleet. I've had a logistics company, and I know what it's like, and I run, national logbooks. We want a federal law right across. All truckies are governed by federal law, and they'll do all their logbooks will be on a 24-hour period. So they'll do their 15 hours a day with their 20-minute breaks after every 5 hours, and then every fortnight they'll have to have a whole day away from the truck, and it's about improving family time and their lives. And what we're not going to allow to do is big players like Lynn Fox and all these big logistics company which go in and get diesel at half the price, and then all the independent guys are paying a lot more. And even, look, as much as I don't like to say it, farmers using tax-exempt fuel to to do cartage on the highway through bin shifts, you know, we will probably put a dye in the fuel on that one. Everyone has to be transparent, and the government, our policy will be that we will set up a system where all owner drivers will have a code, and let's say there's 10,000 of them, you know, in South Australia, whatever the case may be, then we can collectively say to the fuel company, all right, well, these big companies, you're doing it for that, but these ones are all coming in which are using twice the amount of diesel. We're coming behind you to say, what are you going to do for them? So we want to keep, and that keeps trucks safer on the road. It allows drivers to be able to, you know, become accustomed to their own sleep management, in a sense. Like if they get up and go to work like any other Australian, they get up and do their hours, and they get a good, they've got to have a good 8 hours sleep. Good, you know, with their time off. So, you know, it's bringing back the common sense and doing away with these hideous fines. You know, you can be fined up to $1,000, and, you know, that's taking food off the family table. And truck drivers keep Australia on the move. You know, when we're at Christmas or celebrating Easter or having a Sunday race, these guys are in a truck driving to keep Australia on the move, and that we've got to respect our truck drivers. In actual fact, they need to be highly respected, because I tell you what, if we didn't have them, everyone would be going hungry. So we need to really look after them and put them up on a pedestal, because they are real, true champions of this nation. They contribute so much, and they're treated so poorly. So we want to really look into that as well. So we've got a great team. I'm the one that'll be looking into that. I can't wait, really. So
no, that's fantastic. It's a really
to get stuck into that.
And that's a great industry and area, and just country Australia, rural Australia in general, needs a much better deal and a much more respect for what they do for us in more urbanised environments. And I would just like to add to that a little bit too, in terms of we can use hemp as a biofuel. Imagine that as an industry expansion in our country. What are we shipping oil all around the world for when we can create our own fuels which are more environmentally friendly?
Yeah, there's canola, there's biofuels, you know, there's a lot of trees, you know, oil mallees that have been planted in Western Australia. You know, we need to harvest them because they're all sitting out. The biofuel that's available out there is incredible. You know, and they do need to be harvested, because when there is a natural bushfire, unfortunately, sheep are huddling to get cover under these trees, and they go up like little jiffies. So we need to start harvesting all of that. The agriculture's there. You know, people say, oh, Australia is such a dry climate, but it's better to be dry. You can always get water to a dry place. You can't make it rain the other way around, and you know, you can't make the sun shine. So the point is, we've got our commodities. The quality is sought after through to our export markets and domestic, and so when you got a good product, you'll sell it anywhere. So we just really want to get a proactive team, and you know, just build on that, and we can do that very quickly.
I'm glad you mentioned the water pipelines earlier, because we do need some water storage capacity increases and moving it around. We can do it. We can tunnel through the Great Dividing Range and get that from that water from east to west or from north to south. Yeah, there's technologies that can draw water out of the atmosphere. We go big on that. It is predicted by people like Kevin Long from the Long View that Australia will be going through a pretty significant drought for 10 to 20 years. And even if it doesn't happen, it's still important to safeguard ourselves.
What was wrong with the government when these farmers were needing fodder and needing all this stuff? What was wrong with the government putting 2 locomotives and putting water carts on the bloody train and sending it up there, and hey, you know, but all the truckies got together and, you know, to contribute. What do they contribute, the government? Absolutely FA. They are a disgrace. They don't care, and all they're worried about is their self-interest in Parliament, in that toxic bloody house up there. Well, you know, don't get me started on that one.
Well, you're talking common sense right now, Rod and Mark. And I just want to make a quick comment while I can. I'll get to you in a moment, Mark. But in terms of the debate, was it last night, the night before? It was last night, wasn't it? And what a bloody disgrace. Like, these people are so off the target. And there's the same left and right talking points. And as you mentioned before, I think it was you, Rod, no innovation. It might have been you, Mark, but the innovation, the creativity, and actually dealing with the real bloody problems that we face, the dissent within our society, the frustrations of Australians around not just corruption, but the sell-off our public assets and our Commonwealth and all those things, and our sell-out to international and foreign institutions run by multi-billionaires, if not trillionaires. None of these things have been discussed. And so it's great that we've actually got a real discussion, a real discourse about this, which is why it's so important for those watching this to share this. Sit down with your family and friends and actually watch and understand what the real issues are, what the target is, and how we can genuinely build freedom and re-empower the people into our nation for how we move forward and leave something, a legacy behind that we can be bloody proud of for our children. Mark, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just going to say on water.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, Mark's in agreement with this. We're going to make it mandatory that the Constitution is taught in the schools, because how would our future generation know what's being stolen from them if they didn't know what gift they had in the first place? So we're going to make that mandatory. And, it doesn't have to be down to the depths of it'll be done by Wayne Glue. Wayne will come up with a very simple, what they need to know, that the main points of the Constitution, which goes to their right. And of course, once we make the courts constitutionally compliant, well, there'll be no problem, will there?
It's interesting when you talk about educating the kids on the Constitution, but I think maybe some of these major party elected members might need to do a bit of a crash course themselves. It should be compulsory, possibly, to actually read the Constitution. It might even be compulsory that if they're a water minister, they actually have some concept of what is going on with water, or if they're a agricultural minister, they actually know something about agriculture. One of the things we've seen far too often is a lack of knowledge. And I was just going to go back and state about water, because water storage is a massive issue. And one of the things I've pushed for a long time is we have the Great Artesian Basin, which is right down at the moment. So there are concepts around the recycling, stormwater recycling, or collection of rainwater and injecting it into the aquifer to keep their basin full of clean water and allow access. But now we see major mining companies, and I've fronted this here myself. I'm not against job creation and wealth creation, but I tell you, I'm against them damaging the aquifers and the Great Artesian Basin. So there's a lot of things that need to be debated properly, and we're not seeing a common sense debate, as we just mentioned. We're seeing a restricted debate by the left, and the media covering that debate as being the only debate viable. And we see name calling of anyone that may question the government's position. I think we're all a bit sick of that. Political correctness is driving us all mental. If I say, immigration, I've got a problem with immigration because of numbers versus available resources. Next minute, I'm a racist when I'm not even, I don't have a racist bone in my body. So what we're seeing is debate being shut down, and that's something that GAP want to stop. We want to see debate on any topic open and protected freely, which it is done by the Constitution. And that's one of my specialties in constitutional law is our freedom of speech under it. And,
no fracking either. No debate on fracking. Fracking's outlawed. We don't want it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
We don't need to go down that road.
Yeah, smash and grab topics like that destroy everything around them for a very, very small returns. Rubbish.
Well, we've got there's so many other great technologies out there anyway, and more advanced suppressed technologies anyway. And then we've got just natural ones. We can use water. Stanford Research University has created that. There's a car that runs on salt water solely in Europe that's that's sold commercially. So there's a whole host of stuff that we can talk about when it comes to energy, both more safe and cheaper, but also environmentally friendly. Now, I just wanted to quickly mention, just going back to the debate, like, this is the conversation. These sorts of conversation we're having now, they're the ones that are going to go down in history. These talking heads on the TV are an embarrassment. They are an embarrassment to your intelligence, Australia. For anybody watching, this is a very sad state of affairs, and you need to make sure that you help those around, help yourself, but help those around you to understand there is a cutting-edge discourse. We are having it right now. It's open for critique and evolution and all those things, because that's how culture and society evolves. But let me tell you, we need to incorporate these concepts that have been prevalent and themed throughout this discussion into our mainstream narratives and into our narratives and discussions in the family home. So I'm going to have to make sure I discuss this topic, because this is a really big one for many Australians. They're very frustrated about signing away our freedoms, both individual and national, on the UN or international stage. Now, of course, there's many great people who work in the lower and middle tiers of the UN, as well as governments and all the bureaucracies, etc., etc. However, what are the agendas behind the scenes? Are they centralisation or decentralisation? Are they about freedom or control? Who are these billionaires? What is their agendas? And is it good for our country? And there are agreements like the Lima Agreement and others that have been destructive for our manufacturing and other factors on the ground for Aussies. So what are your plan? What is your plan, Rod, around how we deal with these agreements and treaties that have undermined the wealth and the care of Australians?
Well, that's very simple. It was announced in my speech yesterday. GAP's already fixed the problem. So anything that's been assented to under Queen of Australia, good luck. So it's going to have to be reviewed, and it's a bit like the reconsidered, and it's a bit like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, where Andrew Robb, the Liberal fellow, is now conveniently retired just after he did a deal with the Chinese on the Darwin port, and he's on $80,000 a month on the board of the directors of the Chinese company. I mean, all this has got to stop, and anything that has not been passed lawfully, Pete, won't it? It's just going to have to come back nunc pro tunc, and the laws applied accordingly as per the Constitution. No one sells out our nation. I can give you the tip. Not under GAP.
Well said.
And that's it.
So simply said, and that's exactly right. That'll appease so many people who are frustrated with that, including farmers and a whole host of different industries across Australia.
That's why it was that's why it was so important that GAP, well, certainly myself at the start, but GAP kept its team, and we've sent good minds over to London to go into the law libraries over there, and because that's what our ethos was, to get back our country. And what better way to get it back is to revoke all the big deals where the multinationals have been basically just sucking us dry. And they need to be accountable, and that's what there'll be a redress, and the public will really like that. I can see it.
Spot on.
Well,
now,
under democracy itself, sorry to butt in, but democracy itself, the people rule. There's been no request of the people. Can we allow the UN to dictate anything to our bloody country? They don't exist. The people haven't decided that to be the case, and the Parliament's never had a mandate because they never asked the people.
And where's all the profits gone? We're in debt to over $500 billion worth of debt, and where's the profits gone? We came we're in debt after a mining boom in Western Australia. They get on and say, Western Australia's got to get its GST back. The reason why West Australia can't get its GST back, I said it on 6PR 2 years ago when I knew all this stuff, is because we don't have a Crown jurisdiction to fight the Commonwealth. I mean, wake up. And yet these politicians just go along and say, well, you really shouldn't be upsetting the apple cart because it's not in the interest of the public. I said, you got to be joking. They use the excuse of, it's not in the interest of the public, so we don't want to go agitating anything out there. Bloody thing's unlawful. Of course, it's got the best thing in the public is to rectify it straight away when you know there's a problem. So, sorry.
No, don't apologise. So much cleaning up of it in-house that we need to do. And it's incredibly important that we do that and shine that light on the world stage and show the world, like Iceland did in their own way, what we need to do to really care for the people, to care for the environment and care for our future generations. And that is my final question. I'll direct this to you, Mark, because there is a lack of respect. As you mentioned earlier, Rod, there is a lack of honour for thyself and a lack of honour for our people and our environment and each other on so many different levels. And of course, it's okay to agree to disagree. Of course, it's okay to completely condemn a particular perspective that might be bad and might be toxic, but that doesn't mean we need to hate on each other so much. We don't need to be so left and right and divided on so many different issues. Ultimately, there's some good things on the left and some good things on the right, and you should rise above that crap and be intelligent with how you process that type of ideological belief systems, because that's not right. There's some good and the rest of it's rubbish, and chuck the bloody rest out, sort of thing. So, Mark, what are we going to do about helping people to come together a bit more? We don't have to like each other and hold hands and dance around a circle. Oh, we can do that if we want. But we really need to start having that respect for each other and working together as a unified team, because ultimately the people have the power. We are choosing the direction we're going in now. We're choosing for this system to be the way it is, and for the people who are occupying our government to occupy our government. That is our choice. It is our responsibility. And if we unified and started using our intelligence and working in the direction we need to go in, we would instantly achieve what we need to. We would be unstoppable. What are your thoughts around that, Mark?
Oh, look, it's really quite simple. First of all, you've got people that aren't leading by example. I mean, Parliament. Ever watch Parliament debate? It doesn't give you a lot of confidence in the morons that are in there at times. Calling each other's names. If we try and have a decent debate on any topic in the world, we're labelled, undermined. In fact, if anyone gets a decent, strong voice, as you've seen with Rod and me and people that know our history, if we get a strong voice of common sense, next minute we're having interactions with the judicial system and the police that are unfair. They don't want leading by advice, by example. They don't want respect. They don't want honour. By keeping us divided as a nation and fighting each other, they're getting away with what they like. We need to, as a people, we don't have to, as you said, dance around holding hands as much as that would be quite nice. I could see a return to Woodstock. But, I think, and, maybe with the whole weed issue, get the guys in Parliament to have a little puff and sit around and relax and laugh for the first time in their lives, and get to know that each of them are individuals, and that what they should be there to do is to care for the people. And if we saw that sort of respect and honour coming out of Parliament, just maybe the people themselves would have some respect and honour for themselves. I think what we need to do is to be united, is to understand that we have difference of opinion, we have difference of education. And my stance, sadly or differently, is that what I was fighting for 20 years ago really hasn't changed. It's more educated, but it hasn't changed. And we need to, as a people, start to care about each other. Start to not, as you see on social media now, you can put something up and you say the sky is blue and the clouds are beautiful, and someone will come on and start to debate whether what you're actually seeing is actually what you're seeing. We're being forced to divide ourselves, and that's being thrust upon us by the fact that our Parliament and those people that are meant to be leading by example are doing a shit job. And it's past time that people voted in people like us to put some confidence back in the Parliament and confidence back in their own nation, and that we start to be more unified. A unified people is a powerful force. There's nothing in the world that we can't achieve as a united people, and that's why the government likes us divided. And if we're divided, they think they can overpower us by doing all these things to us that are unconstitutional, unfair, disrespectful, and lack equity across the board. And that's something that we need to change. And we're the right people to do that, because we're honourable people, and we'll go in there and we'll fight hard. And we don't back down. Riders never, ever back down in a fight. I have never backed down in a fight. The rest of our team have never backed down in a fight. If you expect us to all have clean mainstream media reporting on us, well, then that's a joke in itself. What you've got to look at is who we are as people, what we fought for, and how much we haven't sat down. And that's what honourable means. I mean, I can't understand how half of these buggers in Parliament dare call themselves honourable, expect others to call them honourable, because I haven't seen honour coming out of there. And honour and respect and compassion and empathy are the things that should drive our nation into the future. And that's what it did do. If you went and read the constitutional debate that created the great constitution, those people cared. They were honourable, intelligent people working together. They weren't political parties, mate. They were a bunch of independent thinkers, employed, elected by their subsequent electorates, and stood together and worked out the best way forward for this nation. And that's what we need again. We need people in there that have respect for each other, that can be honourable, and that can lead this country back to being the best country in the world. We've got the best resources, the best minds, and the best people, and the best piece of land that we're sitting on right now. And it needs to be restored back to where it should be. And if people are going to call us conservative because we want to go, we don't believe the direction of our country is correct, you can label us any way you like. We're centralist, compassionate people that want to respect the people of our nation and do what is best for them and their families and the future. And not just the future between elections, which we're all sick of. The future, the long-term future of this country is what we leave behind for our grandchildren and theirs. And that's what we're here to do. And we're going to do that in a respectful manner. And we are going to earn the title of honourable. And if we don't, if anyone can prove that I'm dishonourable at any stage, I'll walk away, because I'd never do that.
And we must earn that respect. You know, all Australians must earn that respect and understand other cultures and other immigrants that have been here, and respect. That's what we want. Respect, but respect can only come when you have law and order in your country. And at the moment, we are lawless, which is what I explained yesterday. And once that's fixed up, you'll see a more prosperous and a brighter future for this country. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to go, you know, make sure that I've served my Anzacs and my war heroes and my families and my future generations and served my country well. And that's what the ethos of GAP is.
Beautifully said, gentlemen. I almost shed a tear there, Mark. Fantastic. It is our future. We do need to start thinking more from the heart and really start connecting not just to ourselves more, but each other, our environment, get back out into the real world, help out our communities, lift up each other, lift up our community spirit and energy, and really start thinking about what is important in our lives, what should we be valuing, and how should we really move forward, both individually and as a nation, in not just that honourable way, but a bloody healthy and happy and heroic way too. So thank you, gentlemen. What a beautiful conversation. For those who are watching, please share it, please like it, sit down your family, get your popcorn out. This is a lot longer interview than what I originally thought it was going to be, but and rewatch it and really get your minds and hearts around what we're talking about today.
And how you closed it is what is going to be the mindset of the people going to vote. This is the most important election since Federation. It's the restoration of the Commonwealth or become subservient to a foreign power. That's the choice at this election. And I couldn't be any more truer than that, so, because that's the facts.
I think it's
yeah.
Sorry. I think it's about people finally having their voice heard, which has been so long overdue. The people need their voice heard. They want people in there that are passionate, respectful, to the best interest of themselves over anything else. And I think that's what GAP wants to offer. That's what I want to offer. And I think that's what we've been fighting for a long time. And change comes from changing how we do, how we interact, how we vote, and everything else. And if people really believe that the direction of this country is a good direction presently, then of course they won't vote for GAP, because I'll tell you now, we've had enough, and I think that most people have, and we are the people to help lead by walking alongside the rest of Australians and honouring them and being their voice in Parliament.
All right, guys, I got to go.
Yes, well,
thanks
thank
very
you.
much for your.
My absolute pleasure, Rod. I will finish with this. You have got my vote. You've sold me. You talking about being a central party, Mark, very important. You've been labelled the far right by the Channel 7 news articles just recently, and yeah, they must be delusional. It's unbelievable. Haven't even looked at your platform. I recommend to everybody out there, vote the Great Australian Party number 1 as your preferences in the Senate, and if there is a House of Representatives in your candidate in your area. Thanks again, gentlemen, and
thank you.
I look forward to the next occasion.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, mate. Thanks, Rod. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Signing off. Thank you.
See ya.